My name is Bob Bess, or Robert Bess. I'm originally from Cedar Grove, West Virginia. I now live in Florida. I flew the smoke ship from January the 1st until May the 20th, 1969. And the smoke ship is aircraft that put down smoke screens in the LZs so the enemy could not see what they were shooting at, so the troops would be somewhat safer when they landed. I was also the scheduling officer for the 1st Platoon pilots, and on May the 20th, 1969, the commanding officer came to me and asked me who was going to fly the smoke ship, and I told him I was the following day. And he gave me a direct order after a long conversation to allow another pilot, name of Al North, to fly the smoke ship for that day. And I explained to him that Mr. North was a fine fellow, but he just wasn't skilled enough to fly the smoke ship, that there was some maneuvers that had to be done that I didn't think North had the reaction time to do it. But he gave me a direct order to schedule him anyway. Later in the day, of course, that gave me a day off, and later in the day, the word come to us that the Smoky had crashed. And it was just near our base camp, so I ran to a maintenance helicopter and got to the crash site pretty close to the time it happened, and the aircraft was on fire. The pilot, the gunner, had been thrown from the aircraft. The pilot and co-pilot was injured. The aircraft commander, who I didn't want to fly the aircraft, had a broken back and was paralyzed. My gunner was still in the aircraft, burning. The maintenance helicopter that I rode out on had a spike pole, and after giving some tongue lashes and some foul words to people standing there watching my gunner burn, I made somebody go get the spike pole, and I began to try to pull my gunner out of the fire. His name was Clyde Evans. It was May the 21st, 1969. I first touched his head, and he had his flight helmet on, and the flight helmet and his head disintegrated immediately. And after 2 or 3 tries, I finally got a hold of his web belt and pulled him clear of the flames. His head was missing, his feet were missing, and his hands were missing. He was just his torso was all what remained of the body. And as I picked him up and put him in the body bag after he cooled off, his watch fell off his arm, or what was left of his arm. And I put him in the body bag and left. And since that time, I have had extremely hard feelings against the CO, who, against the orders of someone who knew what could happen with that smoke ship on that day. He didn't know. He was relatively new at the time. And I still believe it to this day, he killed my gunner. And for that reason, I despise that man. Incidents number 2, and there was a lot of them. I mean, we had about as many combat hours in Vietnam as I think we had the most combat hours of any assault helicopter company. So we stayed busy, and we got shot at a lot. But generally, in the unit we were in, the pilots quit flying when they had 30 days left in the country. I think they thought that we had probably had enough torture, and our nerves were too bad, and maybe it affected our reaction times. But anyway, I had 5 days left in Vietnam, and I was sitting in the company area, and one of the guys from operations come over and said he needed somebody to ferry an aircraft to Cu Chi. And Tay Ninh to Cu Chi is about 45 minutes to an hour's flight at the very most, and I don't remember exactly now, but I told him yes, I would do it. I'd ferry the aircraft down, and they told me to get me a co-pilot, which we call Peter Pilot. And I went through the hooches trying to find someone, and I opened the hooch door, and this kid was sitting there, just looking dazed. And I said, boy, have you had a check ride yet? And he said, yes. I said, come on, you're going with me. You're going to fly. He had not been on any mission yet whatsoever. So we took the aircraft to Cu Chi to join up with the flight, or to give it to the pilots to join up with the flight, and they were both sick. I think they knew what was happening. They had put 3 lifts of 10 ships into a place we called the Mushroom. Very hot area. We always got shot at pretty bad when we got there. But they were sick, so I had to fly the aircraft into the area. We went in with 3 lifts to pick up, and we got shot up every time. I mean, it was just a genuine firefight. I was sitting in the aircraft, and the 50 caliber tracers was busting right under my chin bubble. The pilot and co-pilot's windows went down about 8 inches to 10 inches. A 50 caliber round came through in front of my face, through in the pilot's window and into my aircraft, through my window. Turned the aircraft real blue in the aircraft, or the air. I could look out the door and see the VC or NVA, whichever it was, shooting at me with that 50 cal. And not just me, he was shooting at the flight. But I was the trail aircraft, and traditionally, if someone gets shot down, the trail aircraft goes in and gets them and does whatever. So on the 3rd lift, the flight lifted off, and a couple aircraft got shot down. And they were about maybe 100 yards from the battle scene, or less, probably less. And I landed into behind the aircraft that got shot down, and I seen a friend of mine. He was a crew chief, and a very good crew chief, and his name was Bill Vanderwedge. And he was laying outside the helicopter, and he was kicking and shaking. And I told my brand new Peter pilot, I said, you hold this aircraft on the ground, I've got to go get my friend. And I jumped out and went and got to Bill. And I said, what's wrong? He said, I've been shot, damn it. And I said, okay. And I got him by the underarms, and he and I both weighed about 125 pounds at the time. And I throwed him up over my shoulder and went and dumped him in my aircraft. And we got, my Peter pilot was terrified. I mean, the boy was just, he didn't know what to do. And we picked up, those people were shot down, and the troops we were carrying out, and the troops they were carrying out. And our aircraft traditionally would carry about 6 American troops safely. All said and done, I didn't know what was behind me, but Bill told me later that we had 15 people plus crews on that aircraft. And I had to take out over top of the aircraft that was shot down. So we put that old Huey into its total limits and 100% beyond, and we finally got it out of there. And I flew about 50 foot off the ground and went to Cu Chi. When I got to Cu Chi, I was worried about Bill, so I got out of the aircraft, and Bill had a 50 cal round. It hit the metal seat and put big whelps on his legs. And he thought he was shot, but he wasn't, thank God. And that was very, I don't know, terrifying is not a good word. When you're going through those things, you're really not terrified until it's all over, and then you start thinking about what happened. But I just had 5 days left in country, so that wasn't a good time at all. There's many more I could talk to you about. I flew a DCS mission, which is Direct Combat Support Mission, one time to Song Bay, which is northeast of Tay Ninh, and it's quite a flight up there. And while we were there, the people wanted us to defoliate the area around Song Bay itself. So they put a 55-gallon drum of defoliant, and I'm assuming that's what they called Agent Orange at the time, in the aircraft, and they had pipes sticking out each side with nozzles on them. And I'd hover around the base camp and sprayed the areas they wanted defoliated. With the vortex created by the rotor blades, it just brought a lot of that stuff right in the aircraft and just soaked us down real good. And we got done with the mission in Song Bay and flew back to Tay Ninh. We got there. We didn't have any water for a shower. When the deep well pumps would go down, we could not use the surface water or anything shallow well water to bathe with or anything in Vietnam, because it was just ridden with diseases. So we went 3 days with Agent Orange caked on us. Life there, probably at our base, was some better than a lot, but it still wasn't easy living. The people before us actually lived in tents and slept on the ground and so on, but they had built hooches for us, and we had 2-man hooches in the officers' area, which was nice. We had a shower and a mess hall. The mess hall was very bad food. We lived, for the most part, we lived on sea rations and things that was sent from home. My mother would send me a care box about once a week, and she would load it down with Chef Boyardee spaghetti and Bounty beef stew. And she would pack it in between with potatoes, because we couldn't get potatoes over there. So we had a generator that we could get electricity. So several of us had our electric skillets, so we could cook our food and heat it. Anytime we were on missions and we were out in the boonies at wait or at another fire base or whatever waiting, we could punch a hole in our sea ration can and soak the box itself with JP4 from the bottom of the aircraft and set it on fire, and it would heat our food for us. I've seen grunts actually fight. I thought they was going to kill each other over a can of Beanie Weenies. So at Fort Walters, and none of us had learned to fly well yet. So we was flying an old bubble helicopter. I was flying OH-23 Hillers, and we was marching. You know, we go to the flight line half a day and go to the classroom the other half of the day. So we were marching to go to the flight line, and we were learning to be officers and gentlemen. And a Apache helicopter. Back then it wasn't Apache, but it was the forerunner of the Apache. I can't remember. It was another Indian name. And it came over, whop, 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 and we were all watching it instead of marching. And when it finally passed over and we all got our vision back down where it should be, we were scattered all over the place. It was just very exciting for us because we had never flew a Huey or any kind of a turbine engine helicopter yet. It's something else. Another thing, my instructor, the first day I ever flew in a helicopter, he showed me what the controls would do, sitting at his desk. And we got out, and he had me put my hands on the controls, and we took off, and we flew out to a wide open area in Texas. And had a little tire in the middle of the field painted white. And he went over and he hovered the aircraft right over the tire. You could see it through the chin bubble, and he put one finger on the cyclic and said, "See," he said, "put your hands on the controls." I did. He said, "No, just hold it right here. Just hover right here." There wasn't 6 counties in Texas would hold me. I was all over half of Texas, it seemed like, the sweat rolling off of me. And he laughed at me, of course, and it was normal. That's the way it was done. And on the way back, he took that bubble helicopter and he just sunk it right in a tree. And, of course, he kept the rotor blades clear, and he just shook like that. And he backed back off of it after a little while. And we was on our way back to the heliport. And he was going back to the heliport, and I looked at him. He said, "I know you wonder what I was doing." I said, "I do." He said, "That was a pecan tree, so I'm shaking pecans. I'm going to go back after a while and get them." And unfortunately, we saw a crash a day or two after that, and we flew over it, and he flew me over it to show me just what it would look like if I didn't behave myself. And found out the next day that it was from my hometown. The boy it was flying was from my hometown. He was a month or two ahead of me in the flight school, and him and another guy was solo playing tag. Was what was determined, and he hit a high tension power pole. I love to fly Hueys. I loved them with a passion. I volunteered for a lot of missions, but I was 27 years old when I left Vietnam, and I went back to Rutgers instructor pilot and standardization instructor pilot, and on my separation physical, I flunked a flight physical. Bad heart. So that ended my flying career, and that was my choice of career. So at the time, the Huey was the Cadillac of the helicopters. I mean, there were helicopters bigger, but the Huey, you could beat a Huey to death, shoot holes through it, and it would still fly. A Huey, very hard to learn how to fly a Huey efficiently, but once you learned to fly it, it was just second nature. It had a jet engine or a jet turbine engine in it, and it had sufficient power, but not for what we wanted to do in Vietnam, because when we lifted off the ground in Vietnam, we were at 5,000 foot density altitude, which made it a little more difficult than it was in the States to fly. It was just a good reactive aircraft. It would take a beating. You could. I've cut down trees with the rotor blades and survived and got it back to the base camp to get new rotor blades put on because they were just riddled. My gunner on Smokey, or my crew chief on Smokey, as a matter of fact, shot holes in my rotor blade one day when we were in about a 90-degree bank going through an LZ. And he shot holes in the rotor blade with a M60 machine gun. And so we survived that. The life expectancy, as I've been told, in combat for a Smokey pilot was about 15 minutes. And thank God, me and my crew made it through, with except for the gunner that the CO killed for me. But flying a Huey became second nature, and you fall in love with the aircraft. You know what it can do and what it will do. And it was just great. I loved it. They have one that flies over my house in Florida about every 2 weeks. I don't know why, but I watch for him. And I can hear him coming for a long ways off, and there's no doubt it's a Huey. It don't sound like any other helicopter.